Snow fell thick over the Montana plains, heavy like a burden the land had carried too long. The wind cut across the frozen ground, sharp enough to sting any skin foolish enough to face it. The Stone River Ranch stood silent under the weight of winter, its wooden posts creaking in the cold, its empty yard filled with drifting snow. May walked straight into it. Her coat was thin and patched. Her gloves didn't match. Her boots were worn from miles of hard ground, but she kept walking with her spine straight and her chin high. Her eyes carried the look of someone who had lost too much to fear anything now. A small satchel hung from her shoulder as she crossed the ranch yard. Her boots left clean prints on the frozen mud. Ahead of her, a group of cowboys huddled around a fire outside the cookhouse. They passed a flask, talking low through chattering teeth. When May walked toward them, their laughter faded slow, one voice at a time. A woman walking alone in a place like this always meant trouble, or a story men liked guessing at but never understood. A tall man stepped forward. He looked older than the others. His beard was gray around the edges, and his eyes were hard. The kind of hard that life gives men who've seen more winters than warm days. "This here's a working ranch, miss," he said. His voice sounded like gravel mixed with whiskey, not a place for strays or stories. "I'm not a stray," May said. Her voice was steady. "And I didn't come to tell stories." He studied her with narrowed eyes. "We don't got room for trouble, or lies, or girls who think they can talk their way out of the cold." May set her jaw. "I didn't come to talk my way into anything." Another cowboy spat on the ground. His eyes were mean, like he enjoyed hurting things that couldn't fight back. "She looks like she came from a saloon kitchen," he said, "or the back room." Some men laughed. Others looked uncomfortable. The older man raised a hand and the laughs died away. He stepped closer until he stood right in front of her. "Well then, what do you want?" May met his stare without blinking. "I can cook," she said. "I can run a stove, work cast iron, bake bread in a snowstorm, and make stew out of nothing. I can keep your men fed." A stillness settled over the group. Only the fire popped behind them. "Where you come from?" he asked. May didn't answer. She didn't look away either. "This ain't a place for secrets," he said. "I'm not turning back," she replied. The man studied her a long moment, then stepped aside and pointed toward the cookhouse. "We got 36 men through winter and no real meals in 2 days. You want the job? Prove it by morning." May nodded. "I need flour, salt, a dry towel, and a little respect." He huffed a laugh. "We'll see about that last part." As May walked to the door, she felt the eyes of the cowboys follow her. Some smirked, some frowned, most looked away. But one man didn't move at all. He leaned against a post, tall, quiet, his coat dark, his hat pulled low. The only thing visible was the sharp line of his jaw and the steady look in his eyes. He didn't laugh with the others. He didn't speak. He only watched her, like he was trying to remember something. Their eyes met for a moment too long. Then May pushed the door open and stepped inside. The cookhouse was cold, darker than she expected. The air smelled of old grease and rusted metal. Pots hung crooked on the walls. Wooden tables were stained and rough. But the old stove in the corner stood solid, and something inside May lifted at the sight. She hung her satchel, rolled up her sleeves, and got to work. Outside, the quiet man still watched. His name was Caleb. He recognized her the moment she walked in. He had seen her years ago in Billings, at the Rose Bell Saloon, a place where good men lost their good sense, and where women worked because they had nowhere safer to stand. He had seen her once, dragged by the wrist by a man twice her size. She never cried, never begged. She only stood tall, defiant, daring the world to break her. Caleb had watched from the shadows and done nothing, and now here she was again, snow in her hair, fire in her eyes. He felt something in his chest twist with old shame and something new he didn't have a name for. He turned away and walked toward the bunkhouse, the fire at his back and a storm building inside him. Before dawn broke, May rose again. The cold cut her fingers as she chipped ice from the water barrel and lit the stove. She worked fast, steady, moving like someone used to pain and winter and survival. By sunrise, biscuits baked in the oven, thick bacon sizzled in the pan, and coffee boiled strong enough to make a man sit up straight. At first, the cowboys muttered. But by the third morning, plates were clean and the room was quiet. Men eating without complaint, without waste. Still, none of them thanked her, except Caleb. He never said the words, but he was always there, carrying extra water, fixing the iced-over step where she slipped, leaving a bar of soap by the wash basin when hers ran low. He avoided her eyes, but his quiet help never stopped. May didn't understand him. Not yet, but she felt something shifting. Something dangerous. Something she wasn't sure she was strong enough to face again. The winter sun rose slow and pale over Stone River Ranch, cutting faint lines of gold across the snow. The cold hung heavy in the air, but inside the cookhouse, May worked fast, her hands steady even when her mind wasn't. Something had changed in the last few days, though she didn't dare name it yet. The men no longer joked when she walked by. They didn't stare the way they had that first morning. They ate in silence, wiped their plates clean, and left with full stomachs and fewer complaints. A warm meal softened even the roughest cowboy, but May knew respect did not come from food alone. It came from surviving long enough to see the next sunrise. Caleb was always the first one inside. He sat alone in the far corner every morning, lifting his hat only when she placed his plate before him. He never took more than his share. He never asked for anything special. Yet somehow he always knew when she needed firewood stacked, when the stovepipe needed clearing, when her hands were too cold to fetch water from the well. He didn't speak much, but he noticed everything. That morning, after the men had eaten and left for their work, May stepped outside for a moment of quiet. Snow covered the entire ranch, like a white blanket pulled too tight. Her breath rose in small clouds. The cold bit her cheeks, but she felt safer in the open morning air than she had in years. The door creaked behind her. She turned and found Caleb leaning there, one hand on the frame, his hat pulled low against the wind. "You shouldn't be out here without a coat," he said. "I've been through worse than the cold," she replied. "I know," he said quietly. Something in his tone made her chest tighten. He didn't say it like a guess. He said it like he carried the truth with him every day. "Did the foreman send you?" she asked. "No." "Then why are you here?" Caleb stepped out into the yard, his boots crunching softly on the snow. "I figured you should know," he said, "that tomorrow the ranch owner is riding in." May brushed ice from her sleeve. "And why should that matter to me?" "Because the men respect him," Caleb said. "Whatever he says about you will decide whether you stay or go." May's breath caught for a moment. "So I'm being judged." "That's ranch life," Caleb said. "Everyone answers to someone." May looked away. She had spent too many years under the thumb of men who decided her worth without knowing her name. She had run from that life, hoping this place would be different. "I'll cook," she said. "If they like the food, I'll stay. If they don't, I'll move on." Caleb shook his head. "It isn't about the food." "Then what is it about?" He hesitated, jaw tightening like he was choosing his words one by one. "It's about who you are," he said, "and what you carry." May's hands curled into fists. "I carry nothing." "You carry everything," Caleb said. She didn't know what he meant, but the way he looked at her made her feel seen, in a way she didn't want to be. And then he walked away. That evening, the Cowboys returned hungry, cold, and louder than usual. Snow clung to their coats. Their horses were restless. Something had put the whole ranch on edge. By the time May served supper, the cookhouse was thick with tension. Boots stomped hard against the wooden floor. Men talked in low, angry voices. May kept her head down and worked through the noise. A hard slam cut across the room. A tall cowboy named Ridge stood up, so suddenly his chair fell backward. Ridge was mean on a good day and dangerous on a bad one. Tonight he reeked of whiskey and cold rage. "This stew tastes like water," he snapped. May didn't bother turning. It tastes the same as every other night. Ridge stomped toward her, his boots shaking the floorboards. You calling me a liar? No, she said. I'm saying you're drunk. The room fell silent. Ridge reached out, grabbed her wrist, and pulled her toward him. The grip was tight and cruel. A grip she remembered too well from the past she tried to outrun. You watch your mouth, girl, Ridge growled. Caleb was across the room before May even had time to breathe. Let her go, he said. Ridge smirked. You think I won't put you in the snow, Caleb? You can try, Caleb said, but you won't like the ending. Quote. Ridge tightened his grip. May's face didn't show fear, but her pulse hammered in her throat. She tried to pull free, but Ridge only held on harder. Caleb stepped closer, eyes cold. This is your only warning. Ridge shoved May aside and swung at Caleb. The blow never landed. Caleb ducked, grabbed Ridge by the coat, and slammed him against the wall so hard the whole cookhouse rattled. The other cowboys stood frozen. May steadied herself, her wrist aching. Caleb's eyes flicked to her, checking if she was hurt. When he saw the red mark on her skin, something inside him broke loose. He pushed Ridge again. You touch her again, you leave this ranch in a wagon. Ridge glared back but didn't fight. Caleb stepped away only when he was sure Ridge wouldn't move again. The room stayed silent until the foreman walked in and dragged Ridge outside for punishment. May stood by the stove, staring at her shaking hands. She hated how easily her body remembered fear. Caleb approached her quietly. You all right? I've been through worse, she said. That doesn't make it right. Quote. May looked up at him then, really looked. Why do you care? Quote. Caleb opened his mouth, then shut it again. Because someone should, he said, for a long moment. Neither of them moved. Snow tapped softly against the windows. The lantern light flickered warm over the wooden walls. Caleb stood there like a shield she didn't ask for, but couldn't bring herself to refuse. Tomorrow will be harder, he said, when the owner comes. Then I'll face him, she replied. Caleb nodded once. You will. May returned to her work, but her thoughts did not settle. Not about Ridge, not about the coming judgment, not about the ranch owner she had never met. What unsettled her most was Caleb. And the strange feeling that the man she barely knew was protecting her from more than cowboys, maybe even from herself. The next morning rose cold and gray over Stone River Ranch. The snow had stopped, but the sky hung heavy like it carried another storm. May woke before the first lanterns lit the bunkhouse windows. Her wrists still hurt from Ridge's grip, but she tied her apron tighter and lit the stove anyway. Today mattered. Today the ranch owner was coming. She stirred the fire until it glowed bright, then filled the big iron pot with water. Her breath fogged in front of her face. She moved quickly, making biscuits, cooking bacon, slicing potatoes for hash. Every sound felt louder than usual. Every moment felt heavier. The men filed in slow. Their eyes were quiet, almost embarrassed after last night. Ridge wasn't among them. The foreman had sent him to shovel snow far from the ranch house until his temper cooled. Caleb entered last. He looked at May only once, and in that single look she felt everything he didn't say out loud. Worry, anger, something else she couldn't place. When they finished eating, the foreman came in and said the words everyone had been waiting for. He's here. The cookhouse went silent. Boots thudded outside. Voices carried over the snow. May wiped her hands, lifted her chin, and stepped toward the door. But when the ranch owner finally walked inside, her breath caught in her chest. It wasn't a stranger. It was Caleb. He stood tall near the doorway, snow on his coat, hat in his hand, eyes locked on her like he had been holding a truth far too long. The room buzzed with whispers. May stared at him in confusion. You? She said. Caleb took a slow step forward. I didn't want it known, he said. Not at first. May felt the floor tilt under her. Things that didn't make sense suddenly did. His quiet help, his steady watch, his anger when Ridge grabbed her. All of it pointed to a truth she hadn't seen because she hadn't been looking. You own this ranch? She asked. I inherited it last spring, Caleb said softly. "My father died. I wasn't ready to run the place. Still ain't sure I am." "And you let me think you were just another cowboy," she said. He swallowed hard. "I watched you walk in that first day, and I knew if I told you the truth, you'd leave before I ever learned why you came." May's hands went cold. She wanted to walk away. She wanted to stay. She wanted to tell him everything and tell him nothing at all. "Why me?" she asked. Caleb's eyes lowered for a moment, then lifted again, steady and honest. "Because years ago in Billings, I saw a girl stand tall in a place meant to break her. I saw her walk away from a life most never escape. I should have helped her then. I didn't." May's heartbeat stumbled. He remembered. He had always remembered. "And when you walked onto this ranch," Caleb said, "I promised myself I wouldn't fail you twice." May felt the walls closing in. She stepped back, shaking her head. "I didn't come here for pity." "I know," Caleb said, "and I'm not offering pity." "Then what are you offering?" she whispered. "Respect," he said. "Work, safety, a place to stand that you choose, not one you fall into." May's throat tightened. She had lived most of her life under men who used their power to break things. Caleb used his to build, to shield, to steady. He stood before her not as a ranch owner or a cowboy, but as a man who saw her pain long before he knew her name. The foreman stepped inside. "Boss," he said, "men are waiting. They want to know if she stays." Caleb didn't look away from her. "That's not their choice," he said. "It's yours." The cookhouse was quiet again. May felt every pair of eyes watching her, but none weighed on her more than Caleb's. She had spent years running. Years hiding. Years believing every place she stopped was just another stop before someone hurt her enough to make her leave again. But here, something was different. She wasn't invisible. She wasn't used. She wasn't alone. May took a slow breath. "I'll stay," she said, "as long as the men treat me fair." "They will," Caleb promised. "Or they'll answer to me. And I work like everyone else," she added. "No special treatment." Caleb nodded. "You earned this place on your own, not because of me." The foreman nodded his approval, and the cowboys relaxed. The tension in the room melted into the warm light of the lanterns. Caleb stepped closer, his voice low enough for only her to hear. "You deserve a life that doesn't hurt," he said. "If you'll let me, I'd like to help you build it." Quote. May didn't know what her future held. She didn't know what storms would come, but she knew one thing as she looked at him. For the first time in years, she wasn't running. She was standing, and someone stood with her. "I'll cook breakfast tomorrow," she said quietly. Caleb smiled, small but real. "I'll be here." May returned to the stove, lit a fresh fire, and felt warmth spread through the room and through her chest. The ranch outside was still winter cold, but something inside her had thawed for the first time in a long time. She had arrived lost. She stayed by choice. And for the first time in her life, she wasn't surviving. She was beginning again,